Hi, everybody, and happy Sunday. I'm so excited to get started with y'all at the end of what was a very sunny Sunday here in Colorado. This is the first year that I've done this not webinar style, but actually meeting style, which puts a lot of control into your hands. So I know we have a lot of folks joining us tonight. As a brief housekeeping note, I would love for you to use the chat function throughout tonight's call. So if you haven't found the chat function yet, look in your bottom or top of your screen for 3 dots, and then you can find the chat bar in there. I'm also going to ask you to make sure you are muted for right now. Everyone is muted by default when they tune in. But you obviously have control of your video, whether you want it to show or not, and your microphone. So feel free to chime in when I ask questions, either through the chat bar or by micing yourself. And then, yeah, if you've got questions and you ever want to jump in, you can always unmic yourself to jump right in. I'm so excited to see everybody who's here. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces, a lot of Bossed Up Bootcamp alums. Kirby's here on Team Bossed Up. Hey, Kirby, thanks for tuning in and helping me manage tonight. I thought we might have a bigger group this year, which is exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in because we are going to spend the next hour together really talking about how to make the most of your LifeTracker planner. I'm actually in my home office today since I didn't want to go into the office downtown. And behind me, you'll see the one remaining box of LifeTracker planners left that will be shipping out throughout the course of this week. So I am just blown away by how many women in our community have really chosen to join us for this year-long accountability program by using the LifeTracker planner. It's funny, I'll give you more on the history of the LifeTracker planner, but since we developed it and this whole methodology back in 2013, never have we had so many planners sell so fast. So I'm thrilled that so many of you have joined us, and let's jump right in, shall we? Tonight's conversation is going to be focused on 2 topics. One, I want to talk through the concept of the fresh start effect. And I know some of you are podcast listeners also, so you may have heard me mention the fresh start effect on the podcast in the past. It's a good grounding component to sort of motivation theory in the world of psychology and cognitive science that is built right into how we use the planner. And then tonight, I want to walk you through using the LifeTracker 101. So that's really what we're going to break down this evening. For those of you I hadn't had the pleasure to connect with personally just yet, I'm Emily Aries. I am the boss behind Bossed Up. I started Bossed Up back in 2013 because I needed a community like this, quite frankly, myself. I had started my career in the realm of advocacy and campaigns and elections and rose quickly before completely burning out and having to basically figure out how to take the reins in my life and in my career back all over again. Having been an advocate on behalf of others, it was challenging for me to learn how to prioritize myself and how to actually advocate for the life and career that I wanted. And so the journey that it has been Bossed Up over these past 7 going on 8 years now, 6 going on 7, I don't know, it's been a blur, but it's been an absolute blast. So whether you've joined me at Bossed Up Bootcamp, I see some bootcamp alums in here, whether you've read the Bossed Up book or a podcast listener, or just found your way to our corner of the internet, this is a really special community, and I'm so thrilled to have you be a part of it. Now, the LifeTracker method that is built into this planner is something I first started developing in collaboration with one of our amazing advisory board members, Anastasia Pochepsova Ghosh, who is a professor. She has her PhD in gender and decision making, where she got her PhD from Yale. And she was one of our earliest supporters in helping me think through, looking at the science, not just the political science and the social science of being a woman in today's world, but really looking at the psychology behind why women feel overwhelmed and how women get overburdened in our society. What lessons from psychology and cognitive science, specifically as it pertains to goal attainment, which is her area of focus, can we combine to create a useful and functional tool? So back in 2013, I first started working with Anastasia on this, and the planner is the culmination of years of testing and piloting and working. And so I'd love to hear from you in the chat bar. If this is your first year having a LifeTracker planner, I'd love for you to note that when you introduce yourself in the chat here. If it's not, if it's your second year or third year, let me know. We've only been coming out with the LifeTracker planner for 3 years now. And if you've come to Boss Up Bootcamp in the past, you may have seen the LifeTracker method introduced there since as early as 2014. So in chat, thanks Carla for getting us started. In the chat bar, tell me where you're calling in from, like where you're based tonight, as well as if you're brand new to the community, or if this is the third year in a row that you've purchased the planner, how you've made the most of it thus far. And hey, Jen. Oh, it's so good to see you here. Hey, welcome. I've seen some bosses here in Denver who joined me at a workshop I did, when was that? In early December with the Riveter. And tomorrow night, I have a workshop in Denver, similar, very similar in how it will go down, all about some of the concepts behind the LifeTracker. And I thought we would have a lot more planners left to basically sell and offer to the women who are joining me tomorrow, but we're down to less than 20, which is amazing. So welcome everyone, and welcome to all my first time planner users and my repeat planner users. So glad to have you here. Now, one of the first things I ask you to do in the opening letter of the planner, I don't know if anyone ever reads this, but we always really take our time to write something meaningful and heartfelt in here. From the Bossed Up team. I should say Kirby, who's on our team, is joining us tonight. And Ellie, who's the third member of the Bossed Up team, designed all of our planners. So if you think the planners are beautiful this year, we have Ellie to thank for that. And I'm sure throughout the course of the year, as we continue to work together and collaborate and hold each other accountable, you'll have a chance to meet Ellie. But Kirby on Team Bossed Up is here. So thanks for being here. So this year, I'm really focusing on embracing adventure. I feel like 2020 is full of unknowns, and I don't know if it's just me and what's happening in my life, or if it's just global uncertainty or some combination of the two, but I'm trying to really look at the year ahead as an adventure full of unknown possibilities and unknown obstacles. And so I want us to, as a community, really focus on embracing the adventure that lay in that uncertainty and unknown. And maybe it's just because I've been working on anxiety with my therapist personally, but I'm really trying to see uncertainty as not a negative thing per se. So that's where my head's at this year. And one of the challenges that I first give you at the bottom of my letter here in the opening letter is to think of one word that describes your intention behind 2020. My word of the year, I've done this for a few years now, and I just find it a helpful kind of meditative exercise. My word this year is grow. I'm really focused on growing in a lot of different ways, personally and professionally this year. And it can be a helpful way to ground yourself in how we're thematically looking at the year ahead. So tell me in the chat what your word of the year is, because I love seeing what our collective consciousness looks like. Liberation, I love it, Michelle. Present, big, launch, momentum, oh damn, space, love it. Exploration, speak, progress, heal, unstoppable, balance, sanity, action. These are great. Better, yes. Courage, hell yes. I love it. As a quick housekeeping note too, when you go to the chat bar, you have the option to either respond or reply to your chat to everyone or just to me. So feel free to make that decision as you see fit. Own it, cleanse, implement. I love it. So wherever you need to put this word so that you can see it, so that whatever it means to you can help you become more aware of those kinds of opportunities related to your intention. What is it called? Not validation bias. There's this really interesting, this is not planned, but cognition bias. What's it called? There's this bias in the world of cognitive science that shows that if you think of something, it's like recency bias or something like that. Confirmation bias. Thank you, Lauren. I believe that's it. When you focus on something like growth, or let's say you're thinking about an actor or actress you haven't thought of in a long time and you read something about her, all of a sudden you see her everywhere, right? That's confirmation bias showing up. It's your brain, you're priming your brain to scan your surroundings and be more likely to pick up on those things you're already looking for. It's kind of like confirming what you already suspect to be true. So put the intention out there that this is your year to really hone in on focus or courage or owning it or better freedom or action, and you will see opportunities for that to become true, right? And that is a powerful way we can hack into our own mindfulness. All right, a couple tips for tonight. Let's use the chat function for Q&A. If for any reason I miss your chat, and Kirby's going to help me keep an eye on that as well, feel free to mic yourself as well. I'm going to be sending you quite a few emails this year related to your planner. We'll make sure that there are easy ways for you to manage your preferences when it comes to emails, but you don't want to miss them. So if they're not in your priority inbox, if they're going off to spam, if they're going off to promotions tabs or getting lost in the ether, make sure you flag me as a safe sender or put me into your primary inbox so that you're likely to get LifeTracker related accountability stuff, right? So I'll be inviting you to our accountability calls throughout the course of the year. I'm going to be sending you monthly reminders to fill out your LifeTracker, and we can, turn those up or down in frequency based on what preferences you have, but make sure you're seeing those emails. If you haven't already, join us in the Bossed Up Courage community on Facebook. It's a place where I know a lot of you are very active already, where we support one another, troubleshoot together, and weigh in with lots of substantive forms of help. And I'm so grateful for how well that community treats each other. Like, I hardly moderate it very much at all, although I do. And it's just a really powerful space. It's been called the best place on Facebook by multiple members of the group. So check it out if you haven't joined us there yet. I often pop in there to give you heads up announcements and like first chance. I break a lot of bossed up news in the Courage community as well. Okay. And then finally, if you know someone who missed her chance to get a planner or hasn't had the opportunity to get one of the 15 we have left, Ellie and I have recently decided that this year we're going to, because we can only order a certain number at a time and we have to choose that number 6 months earlier than right now, we're not going to be able to produce any more physical 2020 planners, but we have decided to release in just a few weeks, maybe even a week, depending on our workload, a digital downloadable print-at-home version for anybody who missed the chance to get their own LifeTracker planner. So if you know a boss babe or you have friends who are asking about this whole accountability community that comes with it, know that they'll still have a chance to snag a planner for themselves. Okay, cool. What's next? Alyssa, I see your note in here. If you could email that to me at info@bossedup.org, that would be helpful. And then Kirby on our team will be able to help you on that front. Thank you. All right, tonight's goals. Let's kickstart the year together with clarity and, most importantly, community. Learn to capitalize on the fresh start effect and really walk through how the LifeTracker works, how it's intended to work, as well as how you can make it your own. So first, the fresh start effect is this really interesting little nugget from cognitive science that was first published by Catherine Milkman from UPenn's Wharton School of Business. And what she and her team uncovered is that people are more likely to take aspirational behaviors or aspirational actions, meaning those kinds of actions that really further your long-term goals, being the person you want to be, those kinds of actions, after salient temporal landmarks that represent new beginnings. So what does that mean? The first of the year, the first of the month, the first day of the week is holistically, if you're a Monday through Friday employee, Mondays have been shown to be way more productive than Wednesdays or Fridays. But beyond that, there's also anniversary landmarks that get you primed to really think long term. Your birthday, for example, is often a day that spurs or triggers long-term view taking. Now, that can be both triggering in a negative way in terms of triggering a midlife crisis, or it can be triggering in a really positive way to sort of break the monotony of every day and force you to take a long-term view on your life and your career and see if you're measuring up to where you want to be. So a lot of motivation theory can be both dark and light, meaning, you know, the same things that motivate you to take action on your goals, that are catalytic events in your life to be who you want to be, can also be catalytic in a catastrophic kind of way. It can be anxiety inducing, it can be panic inducing, it can be guilt or shame inducing, and we'll talk more about that throughout these masterclasses throughout the month. So know that if you have any of those mixed feelings of excitement and fear, that is very common. So how do we capitalize on the fresh start effect in the LifeTracker planner? Well, first of all, we have annual and quarterly reflection pages so that at the start, the end of the year, and the start and end of every quarter, it forces you to take stock of how you're doing and really look back and analyze what's working and what's not working, what you want to change moving forward. We also, of course, ask you to fill out your LifeTracker itself, which is this page right here, every single month. And it's done for a reason, right? The top of the month is a fresh start, a fresh LifeTracker page awaits you and a fresh opportunity to think big picture. We also, as long as I remember, which I'm working on, host every week on Fridays a weekly check-in thread in the Courage community on Facebook. So I've gotten better at it. I should really just schedule them, but I want them to be actually present. You know, I want to be present when I actually write these check-in posts. I ask you to look back on the week every Friday and say, you know, what left you feeling fierce this week, so that we can really focus on the bright spots, focus on giving ourselves credit, because too many goal attainment systems are just looking at the future and are just focused on crossing things off a list maniacally until you're just a taskmaster. And I really want us to look backwards and reflect on what's working so that we can work smarter and also feel better about ourselves and take stock of progress, even when our to-do list is still a mile long at the end of the day on a Friday, right? It's important for your motivation's sake, and I would argue for your mental health, to take stock of how far you've come. So my question for you is this. Everyone's work schedule is different. Everyone's mental energy sort of peaks, has its own different peaks and valleys. So what time of the week would be a good time for you to reflect in your planner every single week? Are you a Monday morning early bird? Are you a Sunday evening tea sipper like me? Or are you a Friday afternoon reflection type person? Or maybe your schedule isn't Monday through Friday at all. You know, I want you to think about when you want to commit to yourself that you will look at your planner once a week, if not more, but ideally at least once a week. And right now, I want everybody to take out their phones. We did this last year too. And I want you to set a nice alarm. And by nice alarm, I mean it's got to be an alarm that has a little name to it, if you can customize it in your phone, that repeats weekly. Maybe throw some emojis in there, and reminds you, I'll do 7 o'clock on Sundays, that's my time to refresh. Repeats every week on Sunday. Give it a good sound, like crystals or something. No, that's not a good sound. Yeah, that's not terrible. And then label it. If you can customize your label in your iPhone, remind yourself, like, this is you time. Or maybe it's the word that you've already said in chat that's your theme of the year. It's time to focus on growth. You know, a growth check-in with your LifeTracker. And go ahead and set that right now so it's a personal reminder to you. We'll talk more about accountability calls and accountability partners and how that works as well. Awesome. Saturday's blocked off from 9 to 12 for professional development on Monday mornings. Nice. Angela's a Sunday evening person. Lori's about Friday afternoon. Cool. Lovely. I'm so glad to see all the different responses here. Every single thought leader out there, or any coach or anyone who has a methodology or who's developed a system, I always take my this advice from Gretchen Rubin to heart. She's another author who I really love. She wrote The Happiness Project. Anytime you're listening to someone's advice around how to achieve goals efficiently and effectively and sustainably, remember this. It is all about personalizing that person's approach for you. None of this stuff works unless it works for you and your real life. So it's all about knowing thyself and experimenting with yourself over the next few weeks, especially as you start to figure things out. All right. So first off, I've got a question for you. What did you all think about this year's upfront review? I was doing a follow-up coaching call with one of our Bossed Up Bootcamp alums who joined me in Los Angeles in November, like a few of you here. And I was talking with her about how much progress she'd made and how amazed I was at how, like, leaps and bounds in terms of a month and a half after boot camp, she had really put all of this stuff in motion. And I said, are you using our LifeTracker? Because it sounds to me like you've done all the reflection that I've prompted you to do. And she busted out her LifeTracker. Was like color coded from page to page. I don't know if you're on here, but it was really delightful to see how much a little bit of upfront reflection can make a big difference with you motivationally. I'm seeing some nods over there. So who has anything they want to share, whether it's good or bad? You know, if this was challenging for you, that's always okay to say here. Or if this didn't quite work for you, that's always welcome too. But how did you find the upfront review section? And feel free to unmute yourself if you want to share, or you can share in the chat. Allison says, the reflection already had me get more done in the past week and set up some other systems for success. That's great. I'm always challenged by the brain dump. Ooh, we'll talk more about that. I'm not sure why, but I want to practice it more because it reveals a lot. Yes, Michelle. It was great looking back at last year's goals and the planner from last year. Yeah, Catherine. Or is that Katie? Yeah, Katie. I know Katie from Chicago, right? It was so great to see the things I'd accomplished, but also the things that I let sit because I ended up doing something else or something better. That's great. I love the what did I learn section. It was a great question to reflect on lessons. Yes, Angela. What did I love and what did I learn? I'm always prompting folks to really look at their year that way because lessons are hard. Challenges are hard, but if we ignore them and suppress them and just focus on the positive, we don't focus on what we learned. I wrote this year, like, I need support to reach my fullest potential. And that's what I learned basically from last year. And then I listed all the people who I lean on, including you, Kirby, like all the people who I lean on for support and how instrumental they have been in me achieving more in the past year. Let's see. It's Katie. Oh, good. I'm glad you remembered too. Yay. So Kate says, last year I felt myself hold back on ambitious goals due to fear of failure and trying something new or big, like quitting my job. This year, I'm going into it with true honesty. That's great, Kate. We're going to talk more about those fears too. Looking back for motivation, can't wait for next year. First timer here. That's great, Carla. All right, let's acknowledge a few common challenges that I hear folks run into when starting using the LifeTracker, especially. I know there's a lot of first timers here. I often hear, I don't know what the hell I want in my love and relationships quadrant, or I got nothing on other. Like, does that mean I'm lacking? And I just want to acknowledge that that is totally normal. We live in a world where, especially in America, although we have a lot of international users too, but in America especially, we live in a world where our identities and our professions are problematically intertwined. So thinking about goals and aspirations and things that we love in life outside of work is really hard for some of us. And drawing blanks is normal. It's really about creating space for exploration. If you are drawing blanks, then your action items should be about exploring your own internal desires. I also hear from folks like, I've got a list a mile long on this. Like, how the hell am I supposed to get all this shit done? I'm so overwhelmed. I'm super anxious, and that makes me not even want to write it down, because to look at it feels too panic inducing. And what I would say to that is, we can't shuffle the deck and organize our cards until they're all out on the table. So bringing mindful awareness to how your body feels while you are filling this stuff out can help you just notice the sort of meta cognition that you're experiencing, like thinking about how you're thinking. So I want you to pay attention to how your body feels, how your body is positioned when you are actually filling these reflection exercises out. Because if you're like, oh shit, as you're writing and you're like freaking out, it's going to impact what you write down. And taking a more expansive view, or just bringing a friend in on this process to kind of walk you through it and walk with you, can be really helpful. And then finally, someone already mentioned it, Kate said this, I feel like I'm holding myself back on ambitious goals because I'm afraid they won't happen. Let's just acknowledge that when we start to articulate our deepest desires, it is a human natural instinct to immediately feel fear about whether or not those deep desires are even possible, or whether we are worthy of having them and making them happen. So that fear of even articulating or saying out loud or writing down what it is that you really want is normal, is predictable in some ways, and I would argue that it is a positive indication that you are on the path towards something you really fucking want. So we have to allow ourselves to feel vulnerable just for a little bit, because what happens after we articulate what we want is almost, I won't say more important, but just as important as figuring out what we really want. Because the next step is actually breaking it down and figuring out the plan for making it happen. Try not to separate those two processes. Articulating your deepest desires is great, but if you wait a day after then to then start on the plan, you're going to feel like you're spinning out and freaking out for the entirety of that day. So if you're going to reflect, I would recommend that you continue on beyond those quarterly reflections to filling out your next LifeTracker, because it will help you assuage that temporary panic of how the fuck am I going to make this happen? Pardon my French. What else? I think that's all I wanted to say on this spot. A couple reminders here. Have patience with yourself. Every month and every quarter, this will feel more familiar and it will feel less panic inducing. I call this at Bust Up Bootcamp, we have a lot of these feelings come up too. I wonder if any bootcamp alums here, would attest to that, because it's totally normal. It's very vulnerable when we're starting to identify what we'd love to have in our lives. And A, little bit of patience goes a long way. B, doing this kind of work in community, including right here, right now with one another, is so validating in making ourselves feel a little better about weathering the vulnerability to get to the other side of desire. And then look for bright spots. That's why I ask for your Fierce Friday check-ins. We have to remember, if you're articulating something really audacious, like I want to write a book, let's say, we have to look back in our lives and think, what achievements in my past have given me the confidence to pursue this new scary goal? Oh, I didn't have a blog 6 years ago, and I've written more in a blog than I've ever written in a book. So if I've written that much over the past 6 years, maybe I can write a book too. That's kind of helpful in looking back on bright spots. There's so much chat happening in here. I love it, and I can't keep up with it. Kirby, feel free to chime in if anyone needs help. But I'm going to just keep going. But I'm going to catch up on this later. Oh, I hate Facebook too. Trust me. If I could have the Courage community elsewhere, I would. But it has not effectively been replicated on any other platform, including Slack. We've tried it. It's just not as good. So I'd be curious to hear what people think. Okay, let's dive in. We've got LifeTracker questions coming up already, so let's dive right in. We've talked about the review. I hear questions coming up about the brain dump already. As you've seen in the LifeTracker, pages 10, 11, and 12 really break down kind of how to use it, but there's nothing like really talking it out. So this is the time to really ask your questions about how you're making the most of this tool itself. The LifeTracker tool at the start of every month is designed to help you sustain motivation over the long term and to prioritize the things that are most important to you, but often not urgent to anyone else, right? Like our deepest goals, launching a business, pursuing a hobby to a masterful level, starting a band or writing a book or traveling to your mother's homeland where she has not returned since she moved to the States at age 13. Those are the important goals to me that would never have been achieved if I were waiting for someone else to hold me to it. So the LifeTracker is truly designed to help you remind yourself that what is most important to you is rarely urgent, but help you create a false sense of urgency to actually make progress on those goals. So that's the theory behind it. Let's talk practically why and how it's designed to help you do that. Before you prioritize any of your to-do list items here, it's really important to brain dump all your possible next steps, because I find that getting it out on the page helps you sort and prioritize. It helps you feel less overwhelmed, and it actually provides you a space to capture it. I find this especially helpful for what's known in the research as cognitive chunking, which is writing out a goal or an action that you want to take and then breaking it down into its component parts. So for example, in my January brain dump, I wrote leadership because I really want to work on becoming a better boss this year, having just hired Ellie full-time and gotten an office downtown. Like, there's all kinds of growth that's happening in the company right now, and I want to be the best leader I can be. But when I wrote leadership down, I looked at that and I was like, well, what the hell does that really mean? Right? What does that really mean? And I wanted to show you this. I forgot to put it in the slides, but I do a lot of this in my brain dump section. I write one thing down and then I break it down into its component parts. So I'm like, oh, well, what do I really mean by this? I want to do this vision exercise with the whole team. I want to be more of an active listener during one-on-one meetings with staff. I want to read leadership books, like finish the Brene Brown book that I was working on and finish the Simon Sinek book that I just downloaded on Audible, right? So it helps me take something really vague and break it down into what are the action steps that I'm actually talking about here. I like a line-free notebook for the same reason. I like to break things down in a really visual way. You should try things that work for you, or you can try that, but the beauty of the brain dump section is that it's blank, so that you can really make the most of it and just kind of splatter it all out so that you can get specific about what these tasks really mean. What do you really want to try to do? And you'd be surprised how many of them get done. You want to be as specific as possible in the brain dump section. So really get the tiniest, most granular actions out there so that you can then sort them on the next page. And oh, that's interesting, Michelle, that you feel overwhelmed by the blankness. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's an interesting comment because it's designed for you to experiment with yourself and figure out what works best for you. So that's what works best for me. Try that. The blankness is there to just get it all out of your head, kind of like a shitty first draft, like a rough draft, so that the LifeTracker itself has less like crossing out and scribbling and moving things all around. Does that make sense? Cool. Cool. Okay. Oh yeah, that's a good concept too, Catherine. You also don't need to use the brain dump section. We only added the brain dump page by popular request. Every year we send out a survey after, I think it's like 6 months of people using it. And we ask for structural feedback from active LifeTracker Planner users. And every year we make some changes because of your actual response. So I'm so glad you like the brain dump page. Yay, good. We didn't have it year one, so it was a big improvement, I think. Okay, let's talk about what the hell goes on the next page, on the LifeTracker page itself. The left-hand column is where I put this month's kind of priority goal when it comes to work, love, wellness, and anything else. I feel like life is not neat enough to fit neatly into specific categories. So the other section for me often has things related to artistic pursuits. It often has things related to financial wellness. It often has things related to family stuff that doesn't neatly fit under anything else. Although I put a lot of family stuff in the love and relationships category too. So what is that left-hand column really about? I think of it as a verbal vision board. It's the one overarching goal that you're striving towards for that month. Now, if promotion or new job is in your top left box there under your goal for your career, that might be the same goal for many, many months. That's totally normal. It's totally normal for your left-hand column to stay somewhat consistent throughout the course of the year. So don't feel like you need to come up with a totally different direction that you're aiming for every single month. That is not how it goes. So for me, leadership has always been very prominent in my career goal area. This year, self-care is in my relationship category because like making sure that I'm taking care of myself and my relationship with myself is my focus this month. But it really just varies for you to take a moment at the top of each month and think briefly in a word, in a phrase, something concise that really taps into your heart's desires. What am I aiming for? Kind of like setting yourself in the right direction. Then, before I move on to the action step, I do want to add that just writing this goal down does not mean it is definitely going to happen. It doesn't mean it's your number one top priority. So for instance, if you have financial goals this month, a lot of folks like to prioritize wellness or finances in January, I have come to find. If you're striving to set yourself up for a financial year of making progress financially this month, it's still okay to write down your career goals, your love and relationship goals, your wellness goals, but know that your finance goal is going to be what you highlight. That's going to be your top priority. So just because you're writing it down does not necessarily make it a top priority. It just clarifies the direction that you want to head in. Let's say you crush all your finance goals halfway through the month. Then you can look at the LifeTracker and say, oh, well, maybe it's time I give my attention to some other area of my life once I'm done with my priority. Cool? Cool. I love what's happening in the chat right now, and I'm going to study it later because hearing how you all use your LifeTracker differently is a really key part of what tonight's all about. Then, after I write out the left-hand column, I move over to the action steps. Now, this is where I take all the stuff that was just bumbling around in my brain dump page, and I wasn't quite sure what the order would be or what the priority would be. And then I put them in a more prioritized order in the right-hand section. This is really important for you to be very specific and to think about, okay, if I only have 3 actions that I can possibly take for my career goals this month, what are the top 3 that I want to start with? You might be the kind of person who wants to start with the most important. That's fine. You might also be the kind of person who wants to start with the easiest. I enjoy starting with what's easy because once you check them off, you're going to boost your own internal motivation to keep going. I believe in that progress principle, which will come up on another call soon. Again, just because you're writing them down doesn't mean it's all going to happen. I have never, ever in years of using this done all 12 action steps in 1 month. Just to be clear, like we're not writing down everything that has to get done. It's what's important to me. What am I aiming for aspirationally? And then acknowledging that like life is an adventure, work stuff takes over like 50 to 80% of our time. And it's okay if not every one of your wellness goals happens every month. The world will keep turning. So the point is to chart your course. The left-hand column is about setting your direction. The right-hand column is about clarifying, okay, once I'm in that direction, what does the next step look like? So that I know where to devote my energy and attention. Does that make sense? Hopefully that's helpful. Then Yay, I'm seeing a thumbs up. Thank you. Then it's time to prioritize. The third step of filling out your life tracker is what I call highlighting. Highlighting comes straight out of research. It's this concept of temporarily prioritizing one area of your life over another. Now, the key here is temporarily, because it's super hard to say my work life is more important than my family life this month, or my wellness is more important than my artistic pursuits, or than my financial goals this month. That's a really hard decision to make. And so keep in mind that all you're saying by highlighting one area is, this is my area of focus for this month alone. Next month I can change it, and that's perfectly fine. I find that highlighting helps me bring priority attention to areas of my life that wouldn't otherwise get it. So it's totally up to you. If you see the month ahead as being a really big work month and that's where your focus needs to be, fine, highlight your work. But I like to put a highlighter all the way around a horizontal section, one of those quadrants. And if you're having trouble choosing between one or the other, just choose one, make it random if you must, and then see how you feel in a week. See how it's working, or if it's making you feel guilty. The point here is that everything is important, but what are you temporarily making urgent this month? I find, and the research backs me up on this, that being proactive in making those tough choices and tough trade-off decisions removes some of the pain that we otherwise later feel when we feel overwhelmed and pulled in a million different competing directions. So you either make the choice now up front, or you make it later by default. The goal here is to be more mindful so that you can look at your calendar and say, you know what, if I'm prioritizing my relationships this month, I'm going to have to move that meeting. I'm going to have to make time for date night. I'm going to have to spend that quality time with my family at the cost of something else, because that's the priority that I want to make and set from the beginning. Cool? Yes, Gail, I can definitely share more of that research. It's also, a lot of this is cited in a particular chapter in my book, which I happen to have right here, because you know your girl loves some footnotes, okay? So if you're a geek like me and you really want to see like the research that I'm talking about, chapter 5 in the Bossed Up book is called Be a Goal Digger, and there's just a ton of notes for this chapter at the very end of my book. That's where all the research is. And the research is always developing, so keep me posted. The book, yeah, the book is here. It was on the LifeTracker to-do list for last year, which is exciting. Yay, I'm glad you have it on audio, Jenna. Thank you. I recorded that whole thing myself, so I hope it's I hope you feel like you're really hearing me when you listen to it, because it is very much me. All right. Y'all are too fun. I'm like going on longer than I thought I would. Here we go. Okay. Finally, motivation. Let's talk about motivation. I'm so glad you love the personality. Oh my God, the book is the best. I'm so glad. It was so hard to write. Writing a book is fucking hard. So if anyone has that goal, let's talk about it. Motivation. That's where we were. So once you highlight, did I skip a step? Yes, overlap. Thank you. I did skip a step. I double clicked. So once you clarify your goals and your action steps, that's like 99% of it. Take the time to highlight one of your priority quadrants and then look for overlap. Overlap is different than multitasking. It's more like, what is one action step that moves me closer to two different goals? I find that wellness goals are ripe with opportunities for overlap. For instance, I have this girlfriend, Janelle, here in Colorado, who she and I actually trained for the half marathon that I ran, that I write about in the beginning of my book, in DC, when we both lived in Washington, DC. And we met as running buddies, part of a fitness group there. And then independently lost touch, both moved to Denver, Colorado, and now we get to run again and hang out with each other. I'm not training for anything right now, and I have no desire to take my running to any kind of a competitive level, but running every Monday morning with Janelle helps me essentially get like two what is it? Feed two birds with one seed. I'm getting my cardio in, which is part of my weekly or part of my regular keep moving wellness goals is to do cardio twice a week. So that ticks that box. And I get to hang out with a good friend who's a leader in her own right as the head of her own organization. So it's so helpful to look out for opportunities for like a double word score if you're a Scrabble person, right? What are the action steps that help me move forward on my wellness goals and my relationship goals, or on my career goals and my financial goals? Like, what are these things that should get extra attention because they're going to give me extra benefits? I like to put a little asterisk next to those action steps. So if you see, I don't know if you can actually see my mouse, but you see where the arrow is pointing. This says meet with a financial coach under my reduce stress example, and make a payoff plan for debt, which helps me move forward to paying off that credit card debt. So those are the opportunities to put a little asterisk there because those are double point activities or action steps. And by the way, they don't always present themselves. Like I don't really see, oh, I have to check one off on this month's LifeTracker. I already had one of these things that happened. Like you don't always see opportunities for overlap, and that's totally fine. So don't stress about it, and don't feel like a failure if you don't see any opportunities. Oh yeah, and I've given a couple examples about money and about fitness, but here's the thing: if you don't find any, that's pretty typical. I would just say I find them fewer months than I don't find them. It's just a good thing to keep in mind is how you can prioritize action steps that move you forward in 2 goals at a time. Cool? Cool. And then step 5, motivate. I talk a lot at Boss Step Bootcamp about this and in a couple of public workshops that I've hosted on goal setting this year. But we, for whatever reason, after kids hit a certain age, we stop seeing the value of motivation through reward. And there's actually competing research on this. So, people can argue with me on this in different camps and philosophically how we feel about this, about external versus intrinsic motivation, intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. But I believe in the gold sticker methodology, the chore chart methodology. When I achieve something that is hard, that is important to me, that I've been striving for months on end, I believe in the power of celebrating. And that's really what these rewards are all about. It doesn't matter if you spend money on your reward or not. It's about sustaining your motivation by creating a sacred and special celebratory moment. My parents and I are working on some financial things, some financial goals that they have after a lifetime of not managing their money necessarily. And I had a meeting with them today, like a Zoom call. We were talking about their plans. And I said to them, how are you going to celebrate? You just paid your final check for your 4th child's collegiate education. How are you celebrating? And their instinct was like, we can't celebrate. We can't spend any money. And I was like, wrong. Like, you have to celebrate. This is momentous. You had 4 of us that you somehow raised and did a pretty damn fine job. And you just wrote Isabel's last check for college. Like, come on, go out. So they texted me a couple hours later and they went and got margaritas at like Chili's for lunch, which made me very proud. It was very cute. They were like, we're celebrating. So I'm a big believer in preemptively and proactively figuring out for yourself, okay, what is my motivation? What is my reward that I'm going to treat myself with at the end of this month? If, and this is important, if I can check off all 3 of my action steps under any one of those highlighted goals. So if I'm highlighting love and relationships this month, then when I check off the 3 action items associated with that category, I get my reward. Sometimes you get your reward quickly and sometimes you don't get your reward. So the goal here is to make yourself prioritize what you are saying is your priority. Cool. So I want to take a moment here to ask you about your motivation, because I find that a lot of us who are goal slayers and planner people and color-coded highlighter type people have trouble sometimes figuring out, like my mom, how to celebrate, especially if your goal is to save money or pay down debt. You don't want to like splurge necessarily and celebrate with something that is a step backwards on your actual goals. So my question for you is, let's do a quick brainstorm and crowdsourcing in the chat bar here. What are some low cost or no cost ways that you celebrate and you kind of create ceremonial sacredness to celebrate your rewards or your achievements with rewards? And I'd love to hear from you. Oh, I love that. A new solo hike in a new place. That's okay, Michelle. I'm a big fan of winter hiking, so I love it. One of the examples I'll give you is when I first started Bossed Up in 2013. I am not a trained entrepreneur. I don't know who is really, but I never really felt like I knew what I was doing for the first year there, and money was very tight and we were taking all these big risks. And so Brad and I were essentially broke and renting in DC. And I always share that when money was hard to come by, but we were taking these big risks, we had to celebrate the highs of entrepreneurship because the lows are so damn low. Like, you have to keep yourself going somehow. So our thing was funfetti cakes. We would make funfetti, or we would make cake, which costs $1.39 at Safeway in Washington, D.C., and a couple of eggs is not going to break your budget, you know, and we would make birthday cake essentially whenever we were celebrating some good progress on our goals. And it was silly. Like, we ate a lot of birthday cake that year, I'm not going to lie. And it felt kind of silly, but it's so undeniably celebratory. That's what we're looking for. Think about like what would please your inner 7-year-old. That kind of undeniable celebratory stuff is often the best rewards. Awesome. Oh my God, so many great examples. Spending an hour or two with no guilt watching a new movie on Netflix or reading a book. Love that, Katie. Spending time with a friend you haven't seen in a while. I love that. Prioritizing wellness. Reward is a Target swimsuit. Yes. Bikinis and swimsuits for some reason are the most delightful things to buy sometimes, or shoes. But yes, or skincare products now is my new thing. So I love that. Fitness class, manicure, new book, pay as you may yoga class. Love. Yes. Face mask and bubble bath. Hell yeah. I love it. This is so great. I really like the idea of crowdsourcing and sharing our rewards, because we live in a culture where achievement is supposed to be the reward in and of itself, which I get. You're like, cool, I paid off my debt. Yay. But like, let's celebrate the achievement. Let's do something silly or awesome or fun and celebrate it. And I kind of wish that I saw more women. I don't know about you, but I wish that I saw more women reveling publicly in themselves. And so the next time you treat yourself or take part in your monthly motivation and your reward, share about it in the Courage community, if nowhere else, because I would love to see us inspire one another to do the same. And much like clarifying your vision, I find that we get a lot of inspiration from other people's motivation and other people's rewards. So feel free to keep sharing. That is the basics. So that's the basics of how to use the monthly life tracker. I use the monthly pages and the daily calendar pages in lots of different ways, which I want to talk about next. But first, I want to just acknowledge that I am iterating. Like, we are in real time experimenting with you in terms of how you use those weekly and monthly pages. You can use them however you see fit. Oftentimes, the question arises, like, how does this planner intersect with or interact with the digital tools that so many of us use? I'm a big Google Calendar person. We have Asana now for task management and project management for work stuff. So like, where does that and how does that influence how I'm using the monthly and weekly pages? I've already seen this conversation come up in the Courage community, and I would echo what someone said about, I don't want to duplicate work just to duplicate it. So what I like to do is look at my monthly pages as basically an opportunity for just really big planning. So like, where am I going to be and when? When am I going to be on the move? When am I going to be speaking where or traveling where, or who's coming to town when? So I kind of use the monthly pages sparingly in terms of just putting the big stuff around travel and also filling out a sort of reminder of what my top priority is for the month. I like to think of this as, okay, the tasks on my LifeTracker are one thing, but when are they going to happen? That's what I like to use the monthly and weekly pages for. So previously, this is my 2019 planner. Previously, before we started using Asana for work, I had my daily to-do list on here, and I use the weekly pages a lot, as you can see. And so I definitely have seen it work that way because they're pretty big. It's a pretty big planner for a reason. I like to have space. Now that we're using project management software, I'm finding that the weekly pages are more for me for my personal goals. Oh God, you can't see anything. Hold on. Are for my personal stuff. So this is like life stuff beyond the daily to-do list for work. And it's funny, I've written more on the weekend, this one weekend of 2020, than I have usually in the past, because usually I would associate the journal with work stuff. But now it's become more personal already. I've also seen people use it as a journal, use it for evening reflections, like a little journal entry every night, or morning pages, like just getting up and writing and sort of free writing. If you're, especially, I found that to be helpful with anxiety or racing thoughts or panic. To-do list, personal life to-do list, daily schedule. I'd love to hear how you're using it. And it sounds like you're sharing on that already, which is great. Awesome. Yeah. I like this comment from Allison, how she's dividing each day in her daily view between work stuff and personal stuff. It's so funny. I did the same thing. Oh, I wonder if we're all doing the same thing. Maybe we should make it official. I'm always hesitant to mess with the daily planner pages from a design standpoint, because I'd rather have give people the freedom to mess with it how they want. But look at this example from September last year. Every single day had a personal list in addition to a work list. So I'm a big fan of that. I'm glad you like scribbling all over the whole page. Cool. Interesting. Okay, cool. I won't mess with the design then. So interesting. So it's really, this is like I said, this is an iteration in progress. So I would challenge you to really experiment with what works. How you're using your planner might change throughout the year. It might adjust. And if I'm being totally honest with you, nobody's perfect. I hear from women all the time, oh shit, I haven't really used it for the last week, or I went on vacation and I didn't bring it with me. I'm like, good. Do you, boo? Life happens. It's okay to take a break and it's okay to come back. So just know that, however integrating this works into your daily life, the most important thing is to make time for that monthly reflection. To me, that's the biggest difference maker in how we achieve or don't achieve our big long-term goals. A couple principles behind planner, paper planner use that I thought would be worth mentioning is that combining somewhere your personal and professional goals can be really helpful in staying more realistic. I find that when I'm just keeping track of my work stuff, my life just disappears. We set unrealistically high expectations for ourselves because we write our work to-do lists as though we don't have a life outside of work that needs our attention. So there's definite value in bringing them together in one place, whether you do that digitally or you do it here in the LifeTracker. There's also an interesting amount of research that I podcasted about and blogged about in December, I want to say, maybe late November, early December. You can find on the Bossed Up blog that writing by hand usually ignites your brain in a deeper way than writing on a computer. So when it comes to reflection, when it comes to problem solving or exploring your own feelings through writing, there's good evidence that shows that writing it down can increase retention and sort of engagement in your thoughts. So I'm a big believer that planning and goal setting is best done on paper first. Put a project plan together on Asana or on your Google Calendar if you want afterwards, but work it out on paper first. Anne Lamott is a writer who embraces this concept that I've already mentioned called the shitty first draft. And she writes by saying, start by getting anything down on paper. A friend of mine says that the first draft is the down draft. You just get it down. The second draft is the up draft. You fix it up. So that's really the intention behind the brain dump and the LifeTracker. And I'm a big fan of paper use in today's digital age, even though I love my phone and I love my digital tools as much as the next gal. Cool. All right. This is my third LifeTracker, and using paper has been awesome. I'm so glad to hear that, Gail. Fantastic. Yeah, so keep the first draft in mind. Oh, the last thing I'll say, did I put it somewhere here? I meant to. I must have edited it down. Oh, here it is. It's best done on paper so long as you don't keep your planner too sacred. There's almost like obviously we want to cherish our planners, but there's a level of sacredness that can actually detract from your willingness to get messy in here. Life is messy. Planning is messy. Problem solving is messy. Be willing to scribble in this thing, right? We can't get too attached of the clean January, blank slate feeling. We have to be willing to scratch things out in here and not make it too precious and too neat and organized. I hope that makes sense too. Scribble, 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 as Gail says. So embrace the shitty first draft. Embrace that concept as we move forward. Cool. All right. So, also in light of that, another design feature that we changed this year is, and probably you haven't flipped through it to get to this point yet, but at the end of every quarter, I think, I'm pretty sure. Yes. Okay. At the end of every quarter, after your quarterly reflection, which is kind of like your annual reflection, helps you take a big picture view. We threw in some note pages, just like lined blank note pages. We had them in the back of the planner last year, but nobody used them because I think they weren't obvious. So I found myself last year using scribbling phone numbers and taking notes in meetings sometimes in this thing. And those note pages are now there to help you do that. Ooh, very cool. And for anyone out there who's like a bullet journal person, I am not, because that to me feels like I have to write my journal and write in my journal every day. That's a lot of work. But this is a nice place to do any bullet-free art stuff or habit tracking that you might want to be doing elsewhere. Okay. This was super fun. Will you be pre-ordering 2021 before trying to judge that order number for next year? Yes. So my team and I are doing some reflection on the planner process this year. I think I need to aim a little higher because I've been blown away. I think we have a few theories as to what worked really well this year compared to last year. I'd be curious to hear if anyone else has ideas on that. But there's just a snowball effect that I'm feeling right now in Bossed Up altogether. Like the past year was a big year for capacity building, and now we're starting to see that capacity really pay off. We will be ordering more next year is the short answer that I would be giving you. So thank you for anyone and everyone who's given us feedback on this. I'll continue to ask you for it because you continue to make this community what it is. So here's what comes next. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I'm just a couple minutes over, but tomorrow, it's Monday. It's the start of a brand new week. Keep the principles of the fresh start effect in mind and know that your motivation is more likely to peak first thing tomorrow morning. Or if you're not a morning person, tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow night. So know that tomorrow is a really good day to hit the ground running, or tonight, if you still have time after this, to reflect on what you want your week to be like. So capitalize on that fresh start effect. And the contrary or corollary to that is give yourself some slack when you feel the middle dip of motivation, which is actually going to be the next topic for our next LifeTracker call. This Friday, I encourage you to join us in the Bossed Up Courage community on Facebook and sharing your Fierce Friday moment of the week. And feel free to, if you haven't already, show me what your planner looks like in real life. We love seeing you on Instagram Ellie manages our Instagram account more directly, but I pop in there all the time too. I write all the, what is it called? The captions as well. So that is me. But I like to pop in there and see people, like real people using their real planners in real life and sharing their progress along the way. So tag us at boss.org and tag me at Emily Aries so we can amplify you and connect with one another using the LifeTracker Planner hashtag. And then we haven't really talked about this yet explicitly, but tonight and throughout the course of these 3 master classes for the next 2 Sunday nights, it's a really good time to ask people where they're from, to sort of peek in at the top of the hour and say, well, are there any bosses in my neighborhood? Or are there any bosses near me? Or are there any bosses who have similar goals that I am pursuing? And it's a good time to shop around for a one-on-one accountability buddy. I saw your comment, Michelle, in the Courage community on this the other day, and I thought it was worth mentioning because this conversation came up around accountability buddies. Like, is it bad if you kind of bail on your accountability buddy? Doesn't that make you feel nervous? Like maybe you shouldn't even find an accountability buddy if you're not going to if you're going to flake on yourself and someone else, isn't that bad? And I would argue that just like everything else we talked about with motivation theory, there's dark and there's light, because the fear of letting someone else down is going to make you more likely to follow through on your shit, right? Like that's the goal, is to create accountability that motivates you, and it can terrify you a little bit. So I would argue that that's a perfectly normal array of emotions to feel about accountability buddies. The key is, through it all, like regardless of whether you get your goals done, the beautiful thing about accountability buddies is the relationship itself. So I write in my book about Vanessa, my bestie, who also has a LifeTracker planner. I didn't see her on the call tonight though, who is in Boston. She and I went to college together. She was writing her PhD dissertation while I was writing this final draft of this book. And she and I texted each other almost daily. Oh, hey, Vanessa. Hey, babe. We texted each other almost daily. And what's funny is that we really, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, Vanessa, we didn't really have productive days every day, but it felt better to simply have a connection with someone who loves and supports you and trusts you, who was there to say, I didn't have that productive of a day either. And you feel better. Like, we were both also simultaneously planning our respective weddings at the same time because we're gluttons for punishment. But that feeling that you're not in it alone, like that's a whole other perk. Like the connection that comes from the relationship, regardless of the accountability portion, makes you feel less of a piece of shit when you do have a bad day. So I would encourage you to be so blunt, but I would encourage you to really seek out connection, even when there's the vulnerability there of, will I let this person down? Because on the other side of vulnerability is connection, to like borrow everything that Brene Brown has to say about that topic, right? Cool. All right. So I love what I'm seeing. Amanda's asking if there's any Chicago area bosses here. I love what I'm seeing. I'd say there's about 500 people out there with a planner this year, which is wild. And we haven't even released the digital downloadable copy yet. So there's like 500 minus 15 that we have to sell. So there's a lot of bosses out there. Not everyone is on top of this like first thing January. So give each other some grace. But even if people aren't using this particular planner, look actively for and seek out an accountability buddy here or in the Courage community that will help you, hustle through those hard times and celebrate with you in the tough times. And at the very least, if you don't find a singular accountability buddy, we have each other. We have this collective here, and that is a-okay too. So if you're not interested in having a one-on-one buddy, that's fine. I will be your buddy. I'm going to be emailing you more about this year. We have 3 master classes this month to really kick things off. And then those quarterly live accountability calls are pretty unstructured. They're not presenting. I'm not speaking at you like Emily the speaker, although tonight included a lot more color than I usually include when I'm speaking on stage anywhere. But it's more of a collection of what's working, what's not working. And we troubleshoot and really share what's happening in your neck of the woods. So I look forward to next Sunday night's call. I will send you the recording of this call in your inbox tomorrow morning. And I encourage you to give yourself grace, but also aim high. Like, this is an adventure and we are on together. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. Oh, Vanessa, I'm so glad what you said. I totally recommend getting an accountability partner. Just a quick check-in text at the beginning and the end of the day makes a world of a difference. That is so true. This was so delightful. I will see you all next Sunday. I'm so glad this was helpful. I think it's just helpful to just start the year off together. You'll have to forgive me and give me a little bit of grace that I'm not dressing up for these. This is weekend Emily. This is like barefaced Emily after a ski day yesterday, Emily. So this is just about being real and starting the year off with a high note, or on a high note, with an amazing group of women. I'll see you all in the Courage community. Until then, keep bossing, and I'll talk to y'all soon.